Sunday night edition of the Anaheim Calling Podcast. We're back to discuss two Ducks games from over the weekend. The Ducks played the Carolina Hurricanes on Friday night, and they just came off of a defeat against the Calgary Flames 2-1 tonight. They did win 4-2 on Friday against Carolina. So two games to get into here. We're probably going to spend the bulk of the podcast on the Calgary game in terms of the recap, and we'll touch on the Carolina game as well. So let's just briefly kind of go over the Carolina game here, since I think the Calgary game is kind of fresh in everyone's mind. So we'll get to that. But just looking back here against Carolina on Friday, the Ducks played a really exciting back and forth game that I thought they definitely held their own against one of the best teams in the NHL, the Carolina Hurricanes. What did you make of that game on Friday?
It was an entertaining one. It was probably one of the more entertaining games from a fan perspective this entire season. That's also a very good Hurricanes team. That's a Hurricanes team that has done a really good job of controlling play and has done a really good job of putting the puck in the back of the net. And I thought the Ducks really held their own in that game. And I think that's kind of one of my biggest positives is that not only the Ducks win that game 4-2, but they also looked pretty good doing it. I'm trying to take a look right now. But when you score and venue adjust at 5-on-5, because at 5-on-5 without score and venue adjusting, the shot attempts were 33-4 and 34 against, and scoring chances were much different story. 16-4, only 10 against, and so overall, it was a pretty good game. Oh, here we go. And 1.48 expected goals for, 1.15 expected goals against. That's all just simply at 5-on-5. When you score and venue adjust it, the shot attempts go more into the Ducks' favor. So it was a good game. Very positive. Very, a lot of good positives to take away.
Just to explain to people what Jake just said. So basically, the Ducks had more scoring chances. They also controlled the quality of the looks. That's why their expected goal count was higher, because that's calculated on where you're getting your shots from, where on the ice, what type of shot. And so they definitely got more quality looks, and they also just got more good looks in general. And a couple of things that I wanted to hit on here, and this is something that we'll have a chance to get into in tonight's game, but the Henrique, Rakell, and Silfverberg line once again showed out against Carolina. Adam Henrique scored the first goal for Anaheim, a really nice wrist shot off the rush that would beat Peter Mrazek, and then Jakob Silfverberg would also add a goal in the second period. So that line just continuing to get it done. And, it's getting to the point, I know that people I think the broadcast is still referring to the Getzlaf line as the top line, but I think at this point, there's really no question that line, the Henrique, or what are they calling it now, Rico and the Swedes?
Yeah, something like that.
that is Anaheim's top line at this point.
Yeah, you look at production on the season, they have majority of the goals for the team. You look at 5-on-5 play, they're constantly driving play towards the other team net. You look at chances, they're constantly generating chances. You look at minutes, they're playing some top minutes at 11:40 for that line on a whole. You look at in terms of just pure 5-on-5 time on ice, Jakob Silfverberg and Rickard Rakell leading the way for all forwards. So in terms of usage, in terms of production, Silfverberg and Rakell are basically the two top forwards on the team, with basically whatever center you're going to plug in there will be the top line center. So having said that, I don't think this current incarnation of the Ducks really has a first line, a second line, and a third line. It's more so they just have three top 9 lines, basically.
Yeah, I feel pretty confident saying that Rakell, Silfverberg, and Henrique is a top line. Maybe they're not an upper echelon first line, because I don't think Henrique is really a first line center, on a contending team. And I've been getting some flack for some of my Henrique takes in the past and how well he's played. And I don't think I've ever said that he's just not a good player. It's that he's maybe more of a depth guy. And obviously, when you put him between two really talented players like Silfverberg and Rakell, they're going to elevate him. And so that's, again, nothing to take away from Henrique, but he's in a very good spot right now. And to his credit, he is taking advantage of that. Now, maybe the highlight of the night, at least in regards to Jake, Troy Terry picking up his first goal of the season. Really nice play overall between him and Sam Steele, entering the offensive zone. Cam Fowler pinching in, getting a shot on net, and Terry would redirect that home. And I thought overall against Carolina, the kid line of Jones, Steele, and Terry was just they were very good, and they looked really comfortable with this kind of up and down pace. And although Terry, I mean, let's talk a little bit about the goal here. I mean, what did you think of that line? And I guess that play on the night there.
I thought that line was pretty good. I thought they generated a decent amount of chances. Yes, they kind of got hemmed in their zone at times, but they did generate a fair amount of chances. And I think that goal, that was a long time coming this season. Troy Terry, I don't think that line was as dominant or had as many great chances in that game as they did in the previous game against Buffalo. But I still think that they did generate a fair amount, and I think that goal was kind of something that was well-deserved. I mean, Terry had generated a lot of chances up until that point, and that's not just because I'm a big fan of his game. That's also because he had controlled play anytime, especially in that Buffalo game. I mean, he looked so good. Anytime the puck was on his stick, you kind of stood up a bit out of your chair and really were kind of wanting to see what was going to happen next. And so that was well-deserved. I'm hoping that maybe that goal kind of loosens him up a bit if he's been gripping his stick a little bit too much. And that will kind of open up the floodgates for him a bit. We'll talk about more about the current or about the Flames game a bit and my thoughts on Terry in that one when we get to that game. But I thought overall it's interesting that this goal came on a tip, because that's not exactly something I think Troy Terry is known for, is kind of his ability to deflect pucks. But if that's something he can build into his game, that's definitely going to be a good thing. And I do want to shout out basically everyone that tweeted at me about this goal. And as I was currently at a really good friend of mine's wedding on Friday during this game. So my phone was blown up slightly by people on Twitter making sure to mention me that Terry had scored a goal finally. So shout out to everyone.
Yeah. So the Ducks would kind of close this one out. I think in large part thanks to Petr Mrazek, Carter Rowney roofing home a puck shorthanded and tight. That was just kind of a play that didn't really seem to be going anywhere. I mean, Rickard Rakell had a nice zone entry there to kind of set it up, but the puck would just find Rowney in front, and he would roof it past Mrazek, and that would basically do it for his game. James Reimer would come in relief, and the Hurricanes would make a slight push at the end of the second period. They would make it 4-2, but ultimately the Ducks were able to hang on. Ryan Miller had a pretty good game, and I mean, like we said earlier, the Ducks really just hanging in there, albeit against a Carolina team that tail end of a West Coast road trip. Those are always really brutal for the East Coast teams, but still, I mean, the talent is there. And I thought that the Ducks really acquitted themselves nicely against the Canes.
And I think one of the things that the Ducks did well in this game was, and I'm trying to get it up really quickly onto the screen for those of you watching the stream of this game, but one of the things the Ducks did really well in this game, and here we go, was that the heat map. And so if you look at the heat map, the Ducks got a lot of their chances from right in the middle of the crease. And then if you look at the Hurricanes' attempts, they were kind of all over the place. And the most concentrated portion were at the point. And I think that's a really good sign from the Ducks that they were keeping the Hurricanes to the outside and not allowing them to penetrate the inside areas at 5-on-5 specifically. So I think that's a really good sign. And that's something we're kind of seeing from this Ducks team, is that even if they're not winning the shot attempt battle, they're doing a pretty decent job of winning the scoring chance battle, and more so the quality battle when you look at expected goals.
Yeah, no, that does seem to be their priority. Is they do give up quite a bit on their end, and it's not always necessarily quality against, but they seem really content to trade chances as long as they're able to spring into transition, spring into the rush, and then get a good chance on the other end. So this Ducks team that we're seeing so far this season, and this kind of ties in a little bit into tonight's game, but this team is kind of unrecognizable from the teams that we've seen in the past. Even with Bruce Boudreau, the Ducks were still kind of a tight checking team. And this Ducks team right now, mean, it's up and down. They trade chances. They play fast. They get out on the rush, and I think that looking at tonight's game, you kind of see where they're going to run into trouble at times against a Calgary team that's a lot more. I don't want to say structured than the Hurricanes, because the Hurricanes are one of the best 5-on-5 teams, but the Flames are definitely one of those tight checking. I mean, they're coached by the former Carolina coach who, I think kind of got them to where they are structurally. And you kind of see where they're going to run into trouble at times playing that style.
Yeah. Yep. Definitely agreed there. The one thing that I will say is I think the Flames still have, or not the Flames, the Hurricanes, they're a bit more open at 5-on-5, even if they have a good structure. And so I think we saw that in this game, and that's kind of Rod Brindamore's MO as a player's coach, is that he more so allows the players to go out and play. And we see that with the Ducks team, that does open yourself up to be hit on a counterattack, be hit with a chance against, different things like that. And so it's not that surprising that the Ducks, with the roster that they have, the players that they have now, that against the Flames, you're gonna, or not the Flames, I keep doing that now, against the Hurricanes, you're gonna get an exciting game. And we saw that. And I mean, that's exactly what I want to see. I mean, I've said it multiple times this season that this Ducks team, love them right now. I don't foresee them being contenders for the Cup. That's not exactly what I see. I think they're definitely impressing me with what they can do and may exceed my expectations for what I had for them at the beginning of the season. But if they can just provide me with entertaining hockey throughout the season, I'm going to be a very content fan. And as of right now,
especially after last year,
and as of right now, even with this game against the Flames, as we're going to jump into it in a little bit, I think you can even have some takeaways where, yes, there are things you'd like to see them clean up. There are things that maybe this Flames team exposed, just like the Hurricanes team maybe exposed slightly also, but they got bailed out a little bit. But as the Ducks are going to trade chances, and it's going to be fun. And if those chances go in like they did against the Hurricanes, like they did against the Sabres, there's going to be some high-scoring affairs at Honda Center this year.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It's kind of, I mean, I think that was part of, maybe not the goal of this team. I don't think that's something they consciously did. I don't think teams really say, hey, we're going to be more entertaining.
Yeah.
But it just makes sense given their personnel. They don't really have guys where you're going to play a tight defensive game. They have the kind of bodies, the legs where they can run and gun a little bit. And, I mean, it's just worth exploring. It's worth finding out how far they can take that or kind of, where – how competitive they can be. And credit to the Ducks, every game that they've been in this season has been a pretty competitive game.
Yeah.
I mean, they haven't, and good and bad, there haven't really been any blowouts, but they're always in it. And I think that, like you were saying, as a fan, that's probably what you want.
Yep.
Hey, and any given night, you're going to have a chance to win, or at least make it interesting.
Well, and the thing I do want to add, because some people will say, well, they beat the Hurricanes 4-2. They beat they beat the Sabres, 5-2. So some
were, I mean, if you watch those games,
exactly,
they were pretty back and forth.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that's kind of what I want to say, is that even if the score ends up being slightly lopsided, I don't think there's any game that you can say the Ducks straight up dominated that entire game. Joshua's data in our Twitch chat says, #it's a process.
Yeah, I mean, the Ducks are they're in the midst of the process right now. And you saw that pregame where the lines were tweeted out, and in a game where the Ducks looked really good, icing what I thought was kind of a more up-tempo lineup, Devin Shore on the fourth line instead of Nick Ritchie.
Yeah.
And then Max Jones on a third line, on a kid line with Sam Steele and Troy Terry, which was a really good line for the Ducks against Carolina. The Ducks just kind of went completely away from that in this game. And I suppose that you can kind of understand it because they are going against a more physical team. Milan Lucic is out there. But the team that they put together tonight was just not as good.
Yeah.
And I know that I guess only two guys shouldn't change that. But swapping out Jones and Shore for Delorier and Ritchie is a significant drop-off. And not so much as far as Ritchie, but
yeah,
Delorier is just not giving them much of anything right now.
No.
And I think and you look at how close this game was against Calgary. Now we're just talking about Calgary here. that's that can be the difference.
Yeah.
Is if because they kind of had to they basically had to shorten their bench in the third period, and that's not quite as much what we've seen in the games where the Ducks have been the most successful. They've been able to roll 4 lines, and I think they got away from that a little bit tonight.
Well, I mean, no, they kept doing that up until the end of the third period with the push. But the one thing with tonight's game that almost became an issue, and this was maybe the first big misstep I think Aikens made, but it really, I don't think this is what cost them in this game necessarily. But I don't know if you noticed this, but during the second period, he swapped Nick Ritchie for Delorier. He put Nick Ritchie with Derek Grant and Carter Rowney for a couple shifts, and put Delorier with Steele and Terry. And I don't know if part of that was a response to the fact that Lucic was starting to kind of get in some shots. Stone was starting to get in some shots on both Terry and Steele, and he wanted more of a pushback than Ritchie was giving. But to me, that just kind of did absolutely nothing for the lineup at that point. Delorier, I mean, basically when that switch happened, Delorier, or that line, started getting hemmed in their own zone every single time they were on the ice. And then once the switch was back made to Ritchie, that was right when Ritchie, granted it was mid-shit or right after he got on the ice, so he was fed by Silfverberg, but that was because, I mean, the puck was contained afterwards, but that was when he hit the post. That was when Nick Ritchie almost scored. And so it just felt like a bit of a mismanagement there with with the third and fourth line, or if we're calling that the third line, in that second period. And it feels like almost a bit of an overreaction to a very physical and they're a big team. The Flames are a big team. They're one of the more chippy teams that you'll find in this Pacific Division, I think, now, with how the league has gone. And I think that this was a bit of an overreaction to that, to ice. I mean, not so much Ritchie, but Delorier. I don't know what the justification is for playing Delorier over Jones or even Shore, to be honest. I think if you play Jones or Shore in that fourth line role, I think you get a very similar, if not better, result than you would with Delorier there.
Yeah, well, so let's get into this recap a little bit, because I definitely have some thoughts on what you're saying, but we should make a little progress through this recap. I mean, the first period was very much back and forth. Michael Del Zotto was just a bit of an adventure defensively. He had one play in the first period that kind of encapsulated everything about his game so far. Just a brutal turnover at the opposing blue line, and then hustles back, to his credit, and stops a 2-on-1. And that's just kind of my take on him right now, is that he's just kind of a net. He doesn't really do anything so positively or so negatively out there that has a larger impact. He's just kind of a body out there. And there are times where he does struggle a little bit, and he tends to make up for that. But I think that this was a game where, especially where the Flames, as you saw in the first period, at times had the Ducks really hemmed into their own zone. You saw where the Ducks are missing Brendan Gooley, who was out again tonight. Their transition game right now is hurting a little bit, just because they don't have that crucial fourth puck mover. Michael Del Zotto, when you're watching his passes, a lot of the times he's either just swinging it to Fowler, going D to D, or he's just making a little quick chip up the wall. He's not like a Gooley who can actually skate it up or who can make a more creative pass. And you definitely saw that early on. Now, to be fair, in the first period, the Ducks weren't outplayed by any means. I mean, they did get their own chances in that first, but defensively, that first period was probably one of the worst that I've seen them play, just because of the quality of the looks that they were allowing. And that would even continue in the second. Just guys getting wide open behind the play in their own zone, guys walking on a John Gibson. And I mean, once again, John Gibson, particularly in that first period, was spectacular.
Yeah, he 100% was. I will say, though, that yes, I think that it was a bit scrambly at different points in time, allowing some glorious chances, one to Johnny Gaudreau, a couple of other ones there. The Ducks also did get their chances on a couple 2-on-1 breaks in that first period. You had Andre Kasha being able to feed it across the front of the net to Maxime Comtois, but Comtois, being a left-handed shot, wasn't able to corral the puck and put it in. They also, I think, had another 2-on-1 that just wasn't able to be finished. So,
Well, that's what I'm saying, is that Rickard, like, for example, Rakell missed wide, and it was basically a 3-on-0. So they had their chances in that period. I'm not trying to say that they played bad overall, but defensively, that was where they really struggled. Then, I mean, it'll happen.
Do you think it was that much different than what we've seen?
Yeah, it was, but just the quality of the chances. I mean, I mean, when you have a guy just walking down the lane unopposed, that's not good.
But I think that, are we allowing? I mean,
but that matters.
How many of those? No, I know. But backtracking for a sec, how many of those happened in that period? 1, 2?
Yeah, but 1 or 2 can. I mean, they could have been They could have been out of the game after the first period.
Not disagreeing. Disagreeing. But what I'm kind of saying, and what I'm trying to say is, it's all. I don't know if I'm gonna say that the entire performance from the defense was that much different than other times when it's only resulting in 1 or 2 plays that were different. I think that, they allowed chances against, but as we talked about against the Hurricanes, or when we were talking about the game against the Hurricanes, this is a team that's going to allow some chances against. It's going to happen as they're trying to generate them for, and I think that I don't know if this game was much different than others. I think maybe there was 1 or 2 more glorious chances in that first period, sure, but I don't know if overall it was that much different.
Yeah, I mean, I suppose that's fair. But I would say, though, that if you look at, for example, the expected goals against in the first period against Carolina, this is actually the same exact amount of time at 5-on-5, so it's actually kind of nice. The Ducks allowed, it was 0.4, essentially 0.4 expected goals against, and tonight it was 0.88, so it was almost 0.9,
fair,
so double.
Fair.
So I don't know. I mean, statistically, it seems to bear out.
Then again, I think against Buffalo, they allowed like over 1 expected goal in that first period against Buffalo. Yeah, I mean, but that was actually a poor defensive performance. I think that this was more. I think maybe the Hurricanes game was better than what we've seen. This was, I think, maybe more par for the course.
Yeah, I mean, they have tended to struggle a little bit in the first period. Okay, so on the other side of our first break here, we are going to talk about the second and third periods, finish up the recap, and get into some bigger picture thoughts here. We'll catch you on the other side. Okay, back from our first break. So, yeah, I mean, like we were talking about, I think they did struggle defensively in the first period. But to your point, it's not as if they were just in their zone the entire period. It's just when things were not going so well. And that game, the game was 0-0 after one period. It could have been 2-1, 2-2. I mean, there was just so many chances on either side of the puck, which to the kind of narrative that we're going with here, that this team likes to play that up and down tempo. Whereas last year's team would just get hemmed into their zone and that was it, and would then just skate past the red line and dump it in and go change. This year's team looks to make plays once they get out of their zone. And so it's not quite as much of a negative that you're giving up chances, like we were just saying here, when you're at least able to make up a little bit for it on the other side.
Yes.
So I don't think that should dismiss the defensive issues, but it does mitigate them to some degree, which is an important thing to know.
Yep.
Second period was arguably worse defensively. The expected goals against were almost just as bad. I think that probably the worst chances they gave up were in that second period. And the difference was there were actually goals being scored in this one, and that made a big difference for Anaheim. Jakob Silfverberg getting on the board right away with a really nice play. The Ducks just transitioning up the ice. What was that?
Real pretty.
Yeah, real pretty. I mean, just right off the initial puck drop, basically the Ducks transitioning the puck up the ice, Hampus Lindholm dishing it off to Jakob Silfverberg, who just kind of sweeps it home. And that would make it 1-0. And I think that the Ducks really needed that goal just to kind of get a little positive momentum. You won't hear me use the word momentum a lot, but I do think that if you can score early in a period, and especially after getting out of a first period where, you feel like you maybe got away with something a little bit, I think it's important just to kind of get the team feeling good about itself and getting a little more aggressive. And you saw that throughout this period. The Ducks definitely generated some more chances. They just kept up that up and down play. I don't know. What did you make of that middle frame? Because I feel like that's where a lot of this game got decided. Because if Gibson isn't quite as good, maybe it's a different story that we're talking about now. I mean, I guess the outcome might be the same, but it would have been far less competitive.
Yeah. I think overall, I think the second period started. The second period started well for the Ducks. They were able to generate a fair amount of chances, fair amount of shots. Obviously, that goal came. And then it's funny because in the first period, they got the power play. And they were actually able to build off of that power play. They weren't able to score. They got a lot of chances, though. And then they kept kind of building off of that for a bit and getting the good run of play. In the second period, it was kind of the opposite. They got the power play, weren't able to really do anything with it. And then that kind of allowed the Flames kind of build some momentum, get some flow going the other direction. And the end of that second period was not pretty for the Ducks. Realistically, the Flames probably should have scored more than a goal there. And, I mean, it's basically only due to John Gibson that the Flames only scored one goal. And, I mean, even the goal that the Flames scored, it was kind of a very odd goal that Gibson would have probably saved on any other night. But Michael Del Zotto just completely screened him on the point shot and allowed Michael Stone. Was confusing the two Stones for a quick second in my head. Allowed Michael Stone's point shot to find a way in. But that wasn't a pretty period for the Ducks. And it did not end that pretty either. I mean, the Ducks got some chances at the very end there to maybe try to salvage it and take a 2-1 lead. But it was not exactly pretty.
Yeah, I mean, to put it simply, they kind of got what they deserved. You can only tempt fate for so long before it kind of catches up to you. And that kind of seems to be what happened in the end of that second period. Although, like you said, it was kind of an innocuous play. It didn't seem like that's something that would go on certain nights. You can only get away with giving up all those chances for so long. And what was interesting is that after that goal, the beginning of the third period wasn't that much better. And you would see the Ducks commit a pretty egregious turnover in the neutral zone. And this is kind of something that we saw throughout the night where they struggled to kind of break through and then pass the red line. Those short little area passes that they do to get up ice just weren't really clicking as well. And on this one, you see Sam Steele just try to go on his backhand to make a play. And the Flames would just immediately turn around, go back on a 2-on-1, and Michael Backlund would just put away a really nice one-timer. And I know you were at the game, so you didn't hear this, but so tonight Cam Fowler was mic'd up, and they actually, after the game, were playing the segment, the recordings, and there was a snippet of him and Michael Del Zotto talking about that play, the goal, and Fowler was essentially saying, well, if Backlund got his shot off so quickly, I was just trying to cover Tkachuk that there's just, if I had known he was going to just dish it over and get it off that quickly, maybe I would have adjusted a little differently and not pressured Tkachuk as much. But he said, sometimes you just got to give the offense credit. You guys just make plays. And that's kind of my takeaway from this goal is that although Sam Steele did turn it over, the Flames turned this one into a 2-on-1 so quickly that there's just almost nothing you can do. I mean, I guess you could argue that Del Zotto should have found a way to intercept that pass, but it's just a really nice play from the Flames, and that would be a turning point in the sense that the Ducks would then just pour it on the rest of the third period. I mean, up to that point, the Ducks had 6 high danger scoring chances at 5-on-5, through the first 40 minutes, and then they would get 7 just in the third period alone. And so then we really saw their offense pick up. We saw Max Comtois get some glorious chances. I mean, Ryan Getzlaf was just setting up everyone tonight. Yeah. And it just seemed like no one could bury anything.
Yeah, and that's going to happen. I think Talbot had a good game. They had chances at the end. I mean, Richie had a couple, Comtois had a couple. Richie had one at the very, very end there. Rakell had some chances. Kind of everyone had glorious chances at the end. And, I mean, sometimes that's going to happen. You're not going to be able to finish every chance that you get. That's just not how it works. If every player finished their chances, then there would be a whole lot more goals in the league. It would be a whole lot different. And it's just, I think from a process perspective, I'm happy. I think that it's not going to exactly be an easy pill to swallow for Ducks fans to think of a loss in a positive way. But I think when you look at this game from the perspective of this is a Flames team that won the Pacific, I believe, last year, one of the best teams in the league last year, maybe are better this year. Their goaltending, if Cam Talbot can play like he did tonight, their goaltending is probably better. And the Ducks held with them. And yes, they had some issues in the end of the second to the early parts of the third, and the Flames deserved to have the 2-1 lead at that point. But the Ducks really found their pushback at the end, and it's not as if the Flames were able to suffocate. I mean, this was essentially... I mean, the Flames weren't necessarily turtling, but the Ducks really turned it on and were able to get some chances. So, yes, you'd like to see the Ducks score there. Yes, you'd like to see them tie that game up. Yes, you'd like to see them win that game. But I think from a process perspective, this was a very good result still for the Ducks. They were able to kind of find chances. Sam Steele had one that he wasn't really able to finish where he was set up by Ryan Getzlaf. And I think for all Ducks fans out there, you can kind of look at this game and have some positive, have some good vibes coming off of it. And this was the first loss of the road trip. Of the homestand of all home games, actually. And so, I mean, what are the Ducks now? They were 6-2 going into this game, and so now they're 6-3. Is that right, or am I off a game?
Yep.
They're 6
I think they're 5. I think they're 5-3. Could be wrong about that.
Let me do a quick double check on that for us. But regardless, this is a Ducks team that in their first and
6-3.
They are 6-3. So in their first 9 games, they've won 2 more or double the amount of games that they've lost. I can't be too bad, especially when you look at the losses. Especially when you look at tonight's game. You have the Boston game where they also played well and stuck with one of the best teams in the league. And what would the other loss have been? That was the game in Pittsburgh that there were some issues in that Pittsburgh game, mainly from a discipline standpoint. So that maybe is the only one where I probably would not look at that game in the same positive outlook as I do this one and the Boston one. But, I mean, even from that perspective, every single game there's good takeaways. And so that's the real good part for this Ducks team.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at some of the chances in that third period, I mean, Silfverberg got denied on a backhand, in front of the net. I mean, he had a glorious opportunity there. Sam Steele had a really nice chance that was set up by Max Comtois. Comtois had 2 chances in the third period there was, I think, 1 in the second and 1 in the third, both just put on a platter for him, and he just couldn't convert. And it's crazy the season he's had so far because I think some people are maybe a little not down on him, but not quite as excited as they were last year. And I think a large part of that is just shooting percentage. I mean, if he's finishing any of these shots, even half of some of these chances, people would be talking about him as a caller candidate because that's just his game. He's kind of, to use a fantasy term, he's kind of boom or bust. Like if he's not scoring, I think he's not like a Steele or a Terry who are more playmakers. He needs to be. He's a guy where if he's not finishing, you're just people are not that excited about him. But there is something to be said for having a finisher on your team, and that's kind of my takeaway a little bit. Maybe not so much from tonight, although tonight was a bit of a symptom of that, but just overall on the season is that it's a little tougher for Ryan Getzlaf right now because he's playing with Andre Kasha, who definitely I think that they do work well together. But his left wing has been a bit of a rotating cast, and it's just tough for him because he's setting guys up. He's getting really good passes across, and he's just not really playing with the kind of shooting talent that he's had in the past who can bury those chances. I mean, he's been with Rickard Rakell for basically the last 3 years, and now that he doesn't have them, I think that people may not. I mean, Getzlaf is still productive, but I think he could easily have at least a few more assists if he just was playing with better finishers, or if the guys he's playing with were just putting those away.
Yeah, and I'm wondering if they're going to look at utilizing the lines because to talk about the lines really briefly. To start the game, they went with Rakell, Henrique, Silfverberg, as to be expected, Comtois, Getzlaf, Kasha, Ritchie, Steele, Terry, and then Delorier, Grant, Rowney. And then I'd say around the third period, they made the change, and I thought the Ritchie, Steele, Terry line was working really well.
Yeah, they actually had some really good shifts. Yeah,
they had some really, really good shifts. And they made the change though, and I actually think it ended up working out well, and they were generating a lot of chances of putting Nick Ritchie with Getzlaf and Kasha and putting Comtois with Steele and Terry. And it's funny because
the all kid line. Yeah.
And I think that originally Ritchie was put with Steele and Terry because I would assume the coaching staff was maybe a little bit scared of someone
Did Rakell have to leave in the second period or the third period?
It was
the second.
I think it was the second period, but I'm not positive on that. It may have been the third. Regardless, though, it felt like Nick Ritchie was put with Sam Steele and Troy Terry with this distinct purpose of almost protecting them. I think that maybe the coaching staff was afraid of some of the bigger guys on the Flames taking some runs at both Steele and Terry, and it almost felt like that kind of was thrown out the window, though, come that third period, which is what you need. You need to be able to make adjustments, to be able to create as many goal-scoring opportunities as you can. And I think Getzlaf set up Ritchie, and I think that Ritchie was a little bit snake-bitten. I mean, he had a lot of great chances tonight. And
he also had a really good chance in the third and just couldn't put it away. But, like, I kind of thought about tweeting this, but it's also Nick Ritchie. Like, you just don't really that's still not an easy shot to put away when it's a shot, it's a pass that's coming out of the corner.
Yeah.
And you're getting a one-timer in the right circle. That's just,
and
even though that's a great chance. Yeah. Even though that's a great chance, that there's a reason the guys who put those away get paid a lot of money.
Yeah.
Well, and it's just one of those things where I just have to wonder a little bit if it's not Nick Ritchie there and say it's just kind of a true, not even a true first line shooter, but even just like a middle six shooter. If that goes in. I don't know. It's a hypothetical, but I think it holds a little weight.
It's a hypothetical, but I think the counter to that is we've never seen Nick Ritchie in these kinds of opportunities. I don't think we've seen Nick Ritchie in a spot where he's able to get fed that pass. And so I don't know if we have the sample size to necessarily see that and say, well, he's going to continually not finish. Maybe by end of season is if he's continually underperforming his expected goals with his actual goals, then maybe we have an argument that, well, the shooting talent's just not there. He's getting to these great chances, he's getting these great looks, but the shooting talent's not there. I don't think I'm at the point. I don't think we're at the point where you can say that.
Just because we don't know doesn't mean that we can't at least have some opinions. Because we haven't seen it doesn't mean he will end up being good. It's just we don't know.
I'll take Nick Ritchie getting.
We don't know if Michael Del Zotto can be good on the power play, so let's find out.
I'll take Nick Ritchie getting 7 shot attempts, 5 scoring chances, and 1 high danger chances tonight, though, any day of the week. Like if he gets those same chances and those same shots next game, I would bet on one of them finding the back of the net.
Yeah, I mean, if he's consistently in that position, I agree with you. It would stand to reason he will reach a level of productivity. He's probably not going to finish at an elite rate, but he's going to put some of those away. It's just where the Ducks are at right now. It's fine going through those phases and trying to find that out. But, if they want to make the playoffs, it's going to be a little tougher if Getzlaf is just feeding Nick Ritchie all season. I don't know. That's, and again, even if like Comtois can just put some away, it's going to change a lot of this. It's funny how shooting percentage shapes so much of the narrative, but it's true. I mean, and you don't have a ton of time to find out. Seasons. The Ducks are almost 10 games into the season. Like it goes by pretty quick, and points are either gained or lost.
This kind of begs the question of, do you want to let your opinion be kind of biased by or determined by a 10-game sample size? Because Richie could have a good 10-game stretch and you think he's a world beater. I think that you need to build up that sample size. We can, like you said, we can kind of build an opinion based upon more so like a hypothesis of, well, I don't think that Richie probably has the goal-scoring talent, but I'm not going to base that off of only these 10 games. Maybe he goes and scores 5 goals in the next 10 games. That may change that opinion.
Well, I mean, if he continues to get this usage, if he continues to get these opportunities, he will reach a level of productivity. I just don't think we've really seen a whole lot in the past to indicate that he's going to be this kind of, finisher, this true like top 6 finisher. But that's not what they're asking him to do either. We're kind of splitting hairs a little bit here. I think the point that we're kind of getting to, and that we'll get to on the other side of the break, because we're getting some questions about this, is just the Ducks are in competitive games. They have opportunities to get points on the board, and how long does the kind of experimental phase last? Because if the Ducks are in, if they have an opportunity to make the playoffs, I just wonder what Bob Murray will do with this roster. Because like we'll get into, there are some moves to be made. So we'll get into that on the second side, or on the other side of our second break. Sorry. Okay, back from the final timeout. So before we get into some questions here and some big picture thoughts, any final impressions or takeaways from tonight's game against Calgary?
I thought this was maybe the first game where I thought Terry was just kind of all right. I think that I thought he had some moments where he wasn't able to kind of generate the type of opportunities he had been generating in the past games, and that's going to happen. He's a young guy finding his way in. But I thought he still had a pretty good game. I just think that it wasn't on the level of creativity that we've seen from him, if that makes any sense. I just saw some things, but I think I think for the most part, how do I word this best? I still think he had a good game. I just think in comparison to what we've seen from him in the past little bit, he wasn't up to those standards, which is going to happen.
Yeah, it's funny you say that because I actually think he had as good of a game as he did against Carolina. It's just he didn't get any points. I mean, in the third period, he had a gorgeous feed to Rickard Rakell on the power play and basically just made something out of nothing because the power play was going nowhere. He was totally stationary, and he just kind of used his body language to shift the defense, shift the penalty killers a little bit, look them off. And then he just wired a pass across the seam, across that Royal Road, the middle of the ice, over to Rickard Rakell in the left faceoff circle. And Rakell just couldn't corral it. I mean, I don't know. There was too much zip on it, but that was an outstanding pass. Just the ability to not – because it's one thing to pass to an open guy, but it's another to create the opening and then hit the guy. And so – maybe you're right that just because he didn't get points, getting points matters. And so if you score a goal and you're not quite as good, that's still a better game. So I guess I shouldn't just totally overlook that. I still thought, though, that he was consistently carrying the puck into the offensive zone with control. That's something that he might be one of the 2, 3, 4 best players on the team at that. I mean, I don't think I've seen him dump it in this season. I mean, of course, it's a bit anecdotal, but he's just always carrying it with control, always looking to make plays, and he was doing that tonight. And at one point, he came in and then circled back and still managed to get a pass across. And the broadcast crew was saying, well, we're seeing Troy Terry learn how to manage, controlling the puck well. And I just looked at that and I thought, well, no, him coming in, doubling back, and surveying his options is actually a really confident play because he doesn't see what's in front of him, and instead of just forcing it, he's choosing to take a little more time. Obviously, it's going to be a little difficult, in some games where you're being pressured, but I don't know. I just think you're probably right that this wasn't one of his better games, but he's really set a new bar for himself this season where every game he's making things happen. So. Yeah. I think the guy who didn't have as good of a game was Sam Steele. I thought that this is something I don't think I really got a chance to say about the Carolina game, but I thought Sam Steele, that was maybe wasn't his best game as a Duck yet, but it was up there. He was very good against Carolina, just making plays all over the ice, really shifty in the neutral zone. And tonight, I mean, you hate to say it, but that turnover in the neutral zone kind of cost him the game.
Yeah.
And he just wasn't quite as impactful. He couldn't put a chance away in the third period. He just wasn't quite as good tonight. But overall, Terry and Steele just continue to work well together. Yeah. And that's really encouraging. I think that Sam Steele kind of finding his stride is really big for Terry because it takes a little pressure off of Terry to be the puck carrier, and he can just kind of find some open lanes and find areas of the ice where Sam Steele can feed him. So it seems like Dallas Eakins is fine with just keeping those two together and rotating out the guy on the left wing. And that's fine, keeping a pair of guys consistently together. It seems like those two can just kind of play with anyone right now.
Yeah. Yep. Agreed. I'm curious to see what happens in the next game. Because we kind of had the rotating left wings on that line where you had Deslauriers at one point, like I said. By the way, yeah, Deslauriers is really not good.
Well, so this is something that I wanted that you were alluding to earlier that I definitely wanted to bring back up a little bit here. It's that looking at tonight's lineup composition, it's not just scratching Jones and Deslauriers. It's that Derek Grant is just unimpeachable on this lineup. I mean, I understand that he's winning a lot of faceoffs and Dallas Eakins really trusts him, but Devin Shore can play center. You can conceivably have Shore, Ritchie, and Jones in the lineup. And just for whatever reason, Derek Grant is just – he's a mainstay in this lineup. And I understand why the coaches trust him because they can put him out there and he'll do the job. But the numbers just don't really back that choice up. And when Derek Grant's out there, the Ducks aren't really controlling play. And I don't know. Because to me, if you had Shore as the fourth-line center – and again, I'm not the biggest Shore guy, but I think that's a pretty obvious upgrade. And then you can, if you have Ritchie and Deslauriers, at least that's offset a little bit. But yeah, I just think Deslauriers is close to unplayable. That's just kind of where we're at with him.
Yeah, he was. I think I'm a little bit higher on Grant than you are. I don't know if I'm. I don't think he's great. I don't think I've ever really said that.
I just don't think he should be playing center. That's my biggest issue. Is that I think either Rowney or Shore would be better center options than Grant.
Do you think that Rowney at center and Grant at wing would be better?
Well, I just think the more you can reduce, because the thing is that the center has to be the most mobile guy who's covering the most ice, and Grant is just, you watch him skate and he's not even close to an elite center, and he's not the most mobile or an elite skater. And he's not very mobile. I mean, I'm just,
No, I know.
Sorry to the Elite 1C crowd, but
you're gonna there's gonna be some people coming at you with that.
But you watch Rowney skate, and Rowney is actually quite mobile.
Yeah,
Rowney has some really good foot speed, and I just think that the way Dallas Eakins wants to play, it just seems to make more sense to have Rowney at center. And it's funny because in the preseason, Grant wasn't playing center. They had him on the wing, and I just don't understand now why he's just kind of a fixture on the floor. Because it matters. If you want to play four lines, you can't have a weak link. That's the problem. I think the Ducks are kind of shooting themselves in the foot just a little bit right now. Again, a lot of this is splitting hairs, but when you're going to be playing close games, that's sometimes what it comes down to.
Yeah, and I mean, because I was going to say, are we splitting hairs here talking about the fourth line? And you're right, though. Well, I mean, you're 100% right. Where if you want to roll four lines like the Ducks are, debating about the fourth line is something that matters. Something that you need to be doing. So
yeah, I mean, they just can't afford to have minutes, where they're just getting shelled. I mean, you look at the stats for that line tonight, just under 6 minutes of 5-on-5 time. Outshot attempted. And then in the expected goals department, 36%. You're not even close to break even. That's just they're not going to be able to get away with that long term. And again, it's limited ice time.
Yeah.
But hey, in a 2-1 game, all the minutes add up. So anyway, that's my rant. My rant on Grant. My Grant rant.
There you go. The Grant rant for everyone. This will be an iconic time of the podcast. You will look back on this as the Grant rant.
I'll look back on it fondly.
Yes. Yeah. All right. So, really quickly, before we jump into Twitch questions, because I have for a while now been promoting the YouTube channel. And so for those of you that are listening to this or watching us live, also on twitch.tv/acpod, we will be getting to you guys very shortly. But at YouTube, we post all the videos there after the fact, and you can comment, with whatever you want, and I will take a look. I'll reply. Maybe we'll read it on here. Couple questions from Mark Bertrand that I think are interesting before we get into some questions about the game. But his first question was: there were a lot of trade rumors surrounding Adam Henrique. Are those dead now? I don't know. I think from a fan perspective, I don't know if I'd consider them dead necessarily. I don't know. What do you think?
It's tough to say. It's tough to say because I think Sam Steele is showing that he's closer to being a second line center than maybe we expected at this point. Now, again, the sample is so small, so you don't want to jump ahead too much. I don't know. I think for right now they're a bit on hold because the Ducks, and again, I'm not saying that this was any knowledge, but just my own view of it. I think the Ducks are just going well. I think that they're enjoying.
Yeah,
they're clearly enjoying this kind of good feeling, this good vibe that they have going, and I think Henrique has been a big part of that. And it just wouldn't make sense to. Bob Murray doesn't strike me as the kind of guy who would be shopping a respected veteran when things are going well.
Yeah,
I don't think that's his style. Although you could argue in the big picture, it would maybe make sense for the Ducks to sell high. Exactly. But, Murray is a big believer in the human component, which, of course, when we're just looking at cap-friendly, sheets, it's maybe a little easier for us to overlook that. But at the same time, I mean, it's a business, and you have to be cold, hard, and calculated. And sometimes those decisions have to be made. But regardless, even if, let's say, you were of the opinion that Adam Henrique, this is the time to sell high, I think you got to ride it out a little longer.
All right.
That's the way these
things
tend to go.
Two kind of follow-ups on that from Mark Bertrand was he had mentioned Henrique's contract was originally looked upon very negatively. Has that changed now that this has happened? In a similar fashion, Jakob Silfverberg, is it a very similar...
That's a question for you. That's a question for you.
And so I've got some thoughts on that. Basically, are we glad
the way,
the Ducks
Jake hates
re-signed him?
Jakob Silfverberg.
Oh, 100%.
For those who weren't around here last season.
You take Henrique, I take Silfverberg. Go.
I just want to point out that last season, for those who weren't listening to the podcast last season, Jake was adamant.
Hey, I'll get into it.
Trading Jakob Silfverberg. Can you imagine them without Silfverberg?
Don't you worry.
Now?
Don't you worry. I'll get into it.
Anyway, so I'll get into Henrique. I do think that long term, Adam Henrique is 29. He has 5 years left in his contract, and he's making $5.8 million, which is not, it's not a terrible figure. I think it's about right. Even for how he's playing right now, I think it's about right. He's not really being asked to be the first line center. I mean, nominally, that's what the role he's filling. But I think if you watch that line play, you kind of know he's not really doing the heavy lifting. And again, this isn't to cast doubt or take away from what he's done so far. But I think right now, the amount of money he's making is just right. And I don't think that long term, this should be enough for the Ducks to just say, the contract is totally worth it, and we're just never going to shop him.
Yeah.
I still think that the trajectory of this team is trending towards the future, and he's the kind of guy that can get you more futures, more picks, more prospects. And so maybe not now, maybe not even this season, but it wouldn't change my opinion that he's still a guy they should think about trading down the line.
And I think when you also look at the contract status, I think that if you can free up some space by moving that to allow yourself to this
could be his best season. I mean, it's very possible that this will be his best season.
And his trade value may not ever be higher.
Yeah.
And so but on Silfverberg, my opinion was never that Jakob Silfverberg was a bad player. Felix is...
I don't know about that.
I never said he was a bad player. I always said he was a good player. Even in the article I wrote...
I'm pretty sure you hate Jakob Silfverberg.
Even in the article I wrote, I never said he was a bad player.
I'm just busting your chops here.
I know. And I hate you for it. Regardless, my whole opinion on it was the fact that... they should have looked to trade him last year. And if they were intent on re-signing him like they were, do that on July 1. Almost have it happens a decent amount, not a significant amount, but it happens somewhat in the league where guys will get traded then sign back with the team that they were traded from. Essentially, the Ducks would tell them, hey, we're going to trade you to a contender. Go try and win a cup, and then we'll sign you back here if you like it. That was more so my view. On top of that, I was kind of against signing him simply because of the age and different things like that. And that was also back when Corey Perry was still on the roster, and so there wasn't really roster spots for the kids. They kind of took care of that by buying out Corey Perry. I'm still not sure that was the best route to take. But
it's still hard to say whether or not that's actually... We'll get a chance to talk about that because the Ducks are playing Dallas this week. But the jury's still a little out on that.
But I think essentially what they said was we're re-signing Silfverberg and we're going to buy out and as part of that, we're buying out Perry. So I think that from
sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say. So when you look at the Silfverberg signing, I don't think you can isolate it to just that signing. I think if you do purely look at them, the fact that they re-signed him, I think that sure, it's a good move for now, and it seems like he's a guy that's gonna really help these kids. So I think overall it's a positive move. And even though I was one of the people who was most against it, I thought the actual contract was fine. It was more so the fact that they didn't trade him to get assets back. And then try to get him back on July 1. But I think that you need to – there's more to the story than with that contract signing than simply the actual signing of the contract.
Well, what's interesting to me, do not underestimate the fact that a lot of these moves, all these moves were made during or after Bob Murray had come behind the bench.
Yeah. True.
And I think there's a lot. The more I've thought about it, the more time has passed. I think a lot of decisions that were made about the Ducks this summer and last season were a lot of it based on what Murray saw behind that bench. And anyway, gonna leave that one alone.
Okay.
But one thing that is shocking to me though, and it's only a small difference. It's $600,000, but the fact that Silfverberg actually makes less than Henrique, I don't think how many people would you ask? What percentage of people around the league or media, how many people would say that Adam Henrique is better than Jakob Silfverberg?
Not many. Not me.
It's a good like the thing is the Silfverberg contract's actually pretty good for the Ducks because Silfverberg on the open market would get more than 5.25. So there's that to consider.
Yep.
For the haters out there.
Yep.
For the Jake Rudolphs out there.
Wow. Directed right at me. All right, so it's that time of the show. For those of you watching this on YouTube, like we said earlier, or listening to the recorded version of this on your favorite podcast services, we do a live stream of the show each and every time at twitch.tv/acpod, where you can watch live and interact live. You can interact in the Twitch chat. We will prioritize any questions if it is a very busy night from our Twitch subs. So if you have Amazon Prime, you get one free Twitch Prime sub each and every month. And with that, you get a special emote in the chat, a special badge next to your name. And it's a way for you to just support the show in a way that will financially help us out more than you can imagine. And you do have to hit that subscribe button every 30 days. So if you do have Amazon Prime, please consider giving us that Twitch Prime sub. It does help out significantly. And on that note, diehard24fan24 did subscribe, and they have subscribed for 10 months. So they're on actually a 10-month streak. So thank you so much for that. So both 10 months straight and 10 months overall. So thank you so much for that. Georgie Khan had a question for us earlier. Is it safe to say that after this road trip, the "it's still early" excuse is no longer valid? So I wanted to take this real quick because I think that "it's still early" is, I don't know if it's an excuse because I asked George to clarify what he meant by excuse. He said if they lose or aren't playing a good game. So I think that "it's still early" is something that applies to the standings and with where teams are at in the standings. And I think you have to hit about the 25 game mark before that is an actual thing. And so I think that it's going to take another 15 games from the perspective of looking at whether they deserve to win or whether they deserve to lose. I think we can do that on an individual game basis even right now. But I think when you're looking at kind of who legitimately are the good teams, who legitimately are the bad teams, before you can say that "it's still early" thing with looking at the standings, you need about 25 games. I think, what is it? Elliot Friedman says American Thanksgiving is the cutoff. Isn't it something like majority of the teams that are in the playoffs on Thanksgiving are in the playoffs at the end of the year? It's something like that, right?
Sure.
Okay. Sure. Let's find this. The Momorg asks this question: what chance the Ducks make the playoffs now that we've seen them play a good variety of games?
Well, yeah. So I mean, statistically, even though it's early, these games still count. They still matter. They still add up. They're still part of the final tally. It's not like they're excluded. I think they're excluded in the sense that you don't want to make conclusions about the team itself, but in terms of just their ability to make the playoffs, like this helps. And I think that I'm much more confident now after these 9 games about the Ducks making the playoffs than I was, before before the season started.
Yep.
Just because they have points in the bank, they seem to play. They seem to kind of play well against anyone. It's you can't just pencil them in for a brutal loss or just getting brutally outshot depending on the opponent. You think back to some of those games last year where they were playing Winnipeg or Dallas and they're giving up 50 shots. That's just not happening. And so they're going to be in every game. And as you start to see some teams in the Pacific kind of fall back into where we expected, such as the team up the road in LA, I think that, I'm definitely I'm definitely higher on the Ducks right now than I was even a couple of weeks ago.
By the way, just for reference, the Ducks per Dom Lashishin's projected standings currently have a 70% chance to make the playoffs. So I think that's interesting there. They actually have a 3% chance to win the cup per his projected standings. I just throwing it out there as I don't think it's going to happen, but interesting nonetheless. So
we'll see.
Yeah. Joshua's data said, question on Thursday. Who does Perry hit first?
Does Perry hit first? Well, he can't climb up the stairs to the press box to Bob Murray, so I don't know.
Wow.
I don't think there's really anyone left that he would have an animosity against.
He's probably going to try to go for Getzlaf.
Yeah, maybe give him a face wash or something. It's going to be weird. I'm not going to lie. Even as a non-Ducks fan, just someone who's followed this team, it's going to be odd. Because right now, Perry is just kind of out of sight, out of mind. But when he's actually lining up against the Ducks, I think that's when it'll be a little weird.
Who hits Perry first?
Oh, man. I think it'll be Getzlaf because, you look at Silfverberg, Fowler.
Maybe Manson.
The guys who are around. Yeah, Manson got into this is something I want to talk about. Manson got into a fight Friday against Carolina. And good fight. He got pretty badly cut though, and he was rocking a pretty brutal cut in the post game interviews tonight. I don't think Josh Manson should be fighting anymore.
No.
I mean, he
maybe he thought with that one against Carolina, maybe it was a situation where he thought he needed to step up because of the guy of Holla getting hurt. But that was a clean hit. Yeah. You don't need to fight when you.
Oh yeah. Well, I mean, I'm sure he got challenged.
Yeah.
I don't think he was the one who initiated that fight.
No.
He just destroyed Eric Holla.
Yeah.
I mean,
it was a clean
It was
hit.
bad, but it was clean. Yeah. It was just a hard legal check.
Yeah.
And I mean, I know that it's hard to just turn down invitations to fight and stick up for yourself or answer the bell, but he's
important to this Ducks team.
I don't think I can overstate how important he is because not only is he one of their best defensemen, he's also their only right-handed defenseman. And so if he gets hurt, it's thin after him. I mean, they don't have a whole lot of depth on the blue line right now. And if he is out or if he's not 100%, that's really bad news for this Ducks team.
Yeah, and anyway, by the way, for those of you out there that don't know this, Perry played his first game, I believe it was yesterday, had 2 assists and a goal. So he
hashtag Perry is still good.
Yeah, hashtag Perry is still good. It's
get
still
dusted off.
Oh, that's not going to be fun if I have to say that for him scoring against the Ducks.
What are the odds he scores? What are the odds he scores against the Ducks?
I'm going to put it at 50-50.
I think he scores. I think it's just the hockey gods.
Also, I realized yesterday, I was going, or maybe it was today, I was going through my Instagram feed. And what? As one does. Yeah. I was going through my Instagram, the Discover page, I don't go through it that often, but I was going through it. And I stumbled upon a video of players returning home and getting the video. And it had PK Subban in his first game in Montreal as a Nashville, crying as a Nashville Predator. They had Erik Karlsson returning to Ottawa. And I'm just realized, I was like, crap. Oh, by the way, sorry, that was Perry's second game. But crap. We're going to have to deal with that with Perry coming to the Honda Center this year.
What do you think they're going to do for him? I think there'll be like a video or a montage.
There's going to be a video. There's going to be a big montage. I think that, he's won a Hart Trophy. He won a Stanley Cup. He won a Rocket Richard. He did all of this stuff. His numbers. What?
And he was the face of the franchise along with Getzlaf for a decade. I mean, that's significant.
Yeah. And so I think that there's going to be a lot of emotions. And it hit me. I was like, oh, crap. I'm going to cry at a Ducks game again this year.
And don't forget Andrew Cogliano
Yeah.
and all of that.
Yeah.
Although I think the Ducks have already played against Cogliano.
I don't think Cogliano's played at Honda Center.
Did they play against Cogliano last year?
I think the trade happened too late because I don't think Devon Shore ever played I don't think he's ever played the Stars. I think I heard that.
Okay, yeah. Yeah, so it'll be interesting.
Yeah. So we'll see. Let me see. There's a couple other questions in here that I did want to get to. Oh, there was a comment by Joshua's data that was just a comment, no question. Want to say props to the Ducks for no penalties tonight. I don't know how much of that was. I mean, good on the Ducks for not taking it, but
penalty.
the refs swallowed their whistles at the end there.
I mean, Getzlaf basically talked his way out of a penalty.
Yeah.
When he shoved who was
Zarnik.
Zarnik, yeah. Almost said Zernak. But yeah, Zarnik. I mean, it's kind of a rough. I know that Zarnik sold it a little bit, and the ref put his arm up, and Getzlaf started barking at him and put it back down. Yeah, I mean, I think that was just the nature of the game, though. I think that it was so physical that it's harder for a ref to differentiate like what's a penalty and what's not.
Yeah.
Although, another thing I wanted to say that I forgot to mention earlier is we talked about how the Ducks went for a more physical lineup tonight. With Delorier and Ritchie. If you're changing your lineup because of Milan Lucic, who is barely an NHL player at this point, like that's just doesn't seem like sound reasoning.
Yeah.
It doesn't seem like a sound approach. Because if you watch Lucic tonight, I know that he's a guy who gets a lot of buzz after each game because he does something and he's noticeable, but he doesn't actually do much of anything outside of just hitting guys when he's out there. It's bad.
Yeah.
Like that. I know that Neal's scoring won't sustain in Edmonton, but that trade didn't look great at the time and is only looking worse between Calgary and Edmonton.
All right. Let's wrap up with this question. Coldfire725 said, let's do the two. So Brandon Pineda 244 said, question, do you think the Ducks would bring back Sprong if they run into some offensive issues? I don't know if they will, actually. I'm pretty much set on the fact that I think Sprong's going to maybe spend most of the year with the goals.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's kind of been a reality for a while now.
Yeah.
I think that if there's an injury, he's probably the first man up.
Probably, I guess, on the right side, yeah.
He's too talented to not. I think he will get a cameo in Anaheim, maybe a couple this year, but
yeah.
I don't think just if they're struggling that they're going to call him up. That doesn't seem to be. I mean, A, it doesn't seem to be a great way to like make decisions, and B, I don't. For whatever reason, there's just something with Daniel Sprong that teams just are not sold on him by, and I don't see that going away anytime soon.
Yeah. What was I going to say? We have this question. Sorry. Coldfire725 said, do you see the Ducks trading for a proven finisher if they are in the playoff race?
Yeah, maybe. I could see them maybe flipping something at the deadline. If they're having a good season and they're still in the race, I could see Murray kind of rewarding the team and adding a piece. But I don't see them going out and getting something like significant.
Yeah.
I could see them maybe bringing an upgrade. Did we not answer this question about what are the chances Max Jones is traded?
Where was that question?
By Eco Warrior 22. Question: what are the chances Max Jones is traded? This year, my favorite NBA and NFL players got traded, Westbrook and Ramsey, and I just picked up my Jones jersey today.
Oh, I missed this question.
Just to see because he was scratched. It's funny because every time either Jones or Ritchie gets scratched, there's immediately like a trade is coming. I do think that if one of these prospects is to be traded, it would stand to reason that one of Comtois or Jones would be the likelier candidates because they're a little redundant at their positions.
Yeah.
And Steele and Terry are significantly better than Comtois and Jones at this point. And so I don't want to bust your bubble here, Ica Warrior, but it's possible.
I don't foresee it happening. Not this year. Not this year at least.
But I don't know like if he'll be on the Ducks long term, for example. But it would like the thing with these young guys, and the reason why I don't buy the whole every time they get scratched, people are like, oh, they're getting traded. It's because these are still cost controlled assets that the Ducks have. That they can basically have them on cheap contracts and that are reasonably effective players. So although you would think, like there's a little redundancy there, maybe they'll get flipped. From a business perspective, it still makes sense for the Ducks to keep these guys just because they're cheaper players.
One thing we didn't mention, and this the Mo Mark brought up, and it's a very good point on Jones. Before we start wrapping up, but Jones actually got hurt a little bit against the Hurricanes. He went into the net kind of hard and came up a little bit limping. So maybe it's managing some player usage there. Maybe there's a little bit of a knock, and instead of forcing him in, they wanted to hold him out for whatever reason, maybe because the Flames are a more physical team. They didn't want to put him in against that and risk potentially hurting him more. Maybe they want to give him a little bit of time off to properly heal. So maybe that's it. Pure speculation on that, though.
Yeah. All right. I think we might be ready to wrap up here.
Yeah, I think it's time.
Yeah. All right, guys. Well, so definitely thanks for bearing with us here, with this different scheduling. We weren't able to pod on Friday, but we've got a pretty full slate coming up this week. 4 total games this week. The Ducks are going to play the Predators on Tuesday, Stars on Thursday, Avalanche on Saturday, and the Golden Knights on Sunday. So the Ducks are not getting any time off here, any breaks after this kind of solid stretch they put together. We're going to find out, I think, a lot about the Ducks in the next 4 games because they're playing some very good teams. I mean, all of those teams that they're going to play are definite playoff teams or, playoff hopefuls and playoff hopefuls to Stanley Cup contenders. I mean, you look at Vegas, Nashville, and Colorado or Dallas, and you maybe could put them in there, although they don't look as good right now. But the Ducks are going to get some tough tasks, and it's all on the road. They're going to need to eliminate hopefully some of the lapses that they've had defensively, and they're going to continue to need some performances out of all 4 of their lines. And I don't see any games where Delorier gets in on this road trip. I mean, it just seems very unlikely. There's no game where you can get away with it.
Yeah, agreed.
I guess we don't know, but there's no way of knowing. But Brendan Gooley's kind of is he actually on IR, or is he just? I think he's been listed as a scratch.
Yeah, he's just been listed as a scratch, so I don't think he's actually on IR.
I will say that the Ducks, and this is not to end on a negative note, but the Ducks have yet to really be blown out or have clearly bad games this season. But if they don't have Brendan Gooley on this road trip at all, I could see one of these games being a little brutal. I look at that Vegas game on Sunday, where it's going to be the tail end of a back-to-back at the end of a road trip. That could be a little brutal. So,
yeah.
Anyway, on that positive note, make sure to check out our Patreon page. For $5 a month, you get 2 bonus episodes. You also get to be part of our Discord chat, where you get to make some suggestions for our bonus episodes. And for $1 a month, you also get to be part of that chat. We are doing a drive right now to help give you more opportunities to support the show and also give you more benefits. So $350 a month. If we hit that in October, we will have a Patreon exclusive watch party. $500 a month, we will host a live Patreon exclusive show. So this is all just total monthly pledges. $750 a month, we will add another bonus episode a month. So that's 3 total episodes. At $1,000 a month, we will host a watch party with a live, in-person post-game show following that. And then at $1,500 a month, obviously very lofty, we will add yet another episode a month. So 4 bonus episodes a month. So we're definitely trying to keep this thing going, grow the show. And once again, that's at patreon.com/ACPod.
One thing I did want to really mention before we say our goodbyes, Tuesday's podcast. For those of you listening to this or those of you listening to this live, it will be live streamed, but it will be a little bit later. I believe we're looking at doing it at 11 p.m. It's going to be me and CJ. CJ making a season debut. We have our beer league game, our Anaheim calling team game at 9 p.m. on Tuesday. So whenever I get home and whenever CJ gets home from that game, we'll be recapping the game against the Predators. So it will be a late one for those of you up late that want to be watching live. Make sure to tune in.
Absolutely. And again, that's at twitch.tv/acpod. Of course, if you want to support the show, free to you, you can always just search us up on Apple Podcasts and leave a rating and a review. It's a really easy way to help the show. The reviews last forever, so it's not as if you have to go back and do it again. So just search Anaheim Calling or Anaheim Ducks on Apple Podcasts, and you will find us there. Of course, if you're not on Apple Podcasts, you can always check out the show through other means. We are on YouTube, like Jake already mentioned, Spotify, Stitcher, really just everywhere. And of course, make sure to check out AnaheimCalling.com. That's at Anaheim Calling on Twitter. Make sure to check out Jake on Twitter at Reindeer Games 91 if you want some wrestling and MLS soccer in your feed. Also Premier League.
El Trafico. Well, no, I haven't really tweeted about the Premier League because it's too depressing as a Tottenham fan right now. But there is the El Trafico playoff game on Thursday. You have LA Galaxy, boo, versus LAFC in the first ever playoff meeting between the two teams. I can't tell if I'm excited or terrified or a mix of all of it. All I know is that even though I do not like Zlatan, simply because I do like LAFC, I know that the trash talk is going to be epic going into it, and I can't wait.
So, if you want more of that, what just happened there, definitely follow Jake on Twitter. That's at ReindeerGames91. I'm also on Twitter at Felix_Sicard. All of that is in the description of the podcast. So that's going to do it for us tonight, guys. Thanks a lot for listening. We've got a big week ahead, so we will talk to you then.
Bye.